Uh, Welcome back. Many people believe if I can do it and I want to do it, I will do it. But in real life, that's not always true. There is another question. What will cost me? Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our series on motivation and decision making. In this conversation, I am honored to continue my discussion with Dr. Jacque Eccles, one of the leading scholar behind stated expectancy value theory. In our previous discussion, we explored how motivation is shaped by two key questions. Can I do this? Do I want to do this? Today, we are going to focus on the third question. What will cost me? Dr. Eccles, thank you again for being here.
I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. To begin, what do you mean by cost in stated expectancy value theory?
Okay. Well, this really comes from including cost, comes from my training in economics. So when you think of doing anything or buying anything, there is always a cost.
Mm,
So nothing is free.
mm,
So the fact that you want to do it doesn't mean you'll do it, because in fact, to do it will cost you something.
mm,
Now, what are costs? So, probably the easiest way to think of them and the most basic is in terms of time.
mm,
So that if you do something this afternoon, you won't be able to do something else. So,
mm,
in a given hour or a given time frame, you can really only do one thing well.
mm,
So, doing something else means you have to give up the
mm,
time you might spend on something that is equally important to you. So I think that's the first kind of cost that people will think about. Well, what do I have to give up in order to do this? And the first thing is time. You can't do everything at once. And once you make a decision to go down a particular pathway, it's hard to change and do something else. So you can imagine if you decide you want to practice and become an outstanding violinist, that
mm,
takes a tremendous amount of time.
mm,
You could have spent that time with your friends, hanging out, going to a movie, reading a book, taking a nap. All of those things could have been what you used with your time instead. So you
mm,
have to think about how much do I want to do this thing as
mm,
opposed to something else? And that's cost.
mm,
Now, some things have a high cost, but they're very valuable because they're very important and they have a lot of status attached to them. So cost isn't always bad.
mm,
Cost can in fact make something more valuable,
mm, mm,
because it's worth putting in the time.
mm.
Now, other kinds is it,
Yeah, that's good. You can continue.
okay, all right. So if you think now, if you think about an economist in particular,
Mm,
cost can also be dollars. So not time, can be
mm,
money.
That's why I wanted to ask you what kind of cost. You came up
Well,
with some kinds of cost. Even you will need to hear from you those kinds of cost.
well, another obvious one is money.
Mm-hmm.
And this can be money that it will take to buy equipment. This can be money that will need to buy a trainer. This could be money that will mean you have to travel to go and do it. So many things actually you have to pay for. You have to buy them,
Mm-hmm.
or you have to buy things that allow it to happen. And this may be particularly important to parents when they make a decision and they're thinking about getting their child training in something,
Mm-hmm.
and they know they have to pay for the training because it's not part of the school. It's not part of a free service that's
Mm-hmm.
available to families. So
Mm-hmm.
this is one kind of area where um, social class, poverty can make a real difference in the opportunities that are available for a specific individual or a child. It's easier to think about it as a child, but it's also true for adults.
Mm-hmm.
So If I want to go and travel, that costs me a lot of money. I need to think about it a lot about whether or not I want to use my money for that or use my money for something else, even if I really want to do it. So that would be the second kind of cost that is pretty easy to understand. So time and money. So those would be sort of the key easy to think about costs. There are also psychological costs. So when you think about doing something, you will have memories of having done similar things in the past. And those memories can be good memories or bad memories. So if when you think about doing something, you get very anxious, you get very worried about whether or not you're going to be able to succeed, you may not do it because that psychological cost is just too great for you. You really don't want to experience those emotions again. Classical conditioning is one of the ways that those can get created. Reinforcement histories, those things can get created. Personality characteristics. So I really don't like to compete. I don't like to feel like I'm competing with somebody else. And so when I think about playing a game, and it's a game where I know there's going to be competition, I don't want to do it, even if I think I might enjoy the game. Now, some people could say that was anticipated anxiety. Some people would say it was fear of failure. It certainly is related to expectancies for success. So the lower your expectancies for success, the more anticipated anxiety may be a cost. And I would call that a psychological cost. There can also be social costs. So you interact with other people all of the time, they have opinions about what you should be spending your time doing. And if they think you're wasting your time or you're doing something that someone else will find offensive, or it's not the best way to use your time, and they tell you so, that could be a cost too, that you know you're going to get reactions from others. And I can give you a classic example that came up in one of my studies of a young man who wanted to be a violinist for a profession. He was quite good at playing a violin. At age 13, so this was an adult remembering back in his earlier life, he told his parents he wanted to be a violinist, and his father took the violin away, crushed it, and threw it in the garbage can and said, "No, you cannot make money as a violinist. It is now time that you get serious trying to train yourself at something that you can make a living at," because he was 13 or 14 years old. So that's uh, a very strong case of where another individual in a social cost stopped you from doing what you wanted to do. So that's another kind of cost we have to think about. Well, what will my parents think of me? And now that's very similar in some ways to social benefits, something being useful to you. So usefulness is the positive side of this characteristic. Social anxiety or social rejection would be the negative side of that very same feeling. Okay. The another one that comes pretty much straight out of economics is what I would call sunk cost. So this is how much time and effort have you already put in.
Is it opportunity cost?
Yes. Well, opportunity cost can be not changing. So opportunity cost would be similar in that when you do something, you can't do something else. This is now putting it more in a longitudinal perspective. So you've made a decision at one point to do it, that it's worth it and you will lose other opportunities. Well, what happens 5 years from now when you've put in all that time and another opportunity comes up? You may say, no, I can't change, even if I want to, because I've put so much time into developing this skill that I can't afford to not continue making use of that skill. So I now have We could also think about it in terms of the um, opportunity. I'm trying to think of exactly the right word. So just a second. You know what it is. You studied it. Capitals.
Oh, I see.
So if you've put a lot of time developing a particular in your intellectual capital, for
Mm,
example, and
mm,
and what you've done is to develop your intellectual capital, you spent a lot of time becoming a historian.
mm,
And suddenly someone says, "Well, gee, why didn't you study economics?" Or
mm,
what would you think about training to be a chemist?
mm,
And you might say to yourself, "Well, I would like to do that. I'm
mm,
sure I would succeed at it, but I've
mm,
already trained to be a historian.
mm,
What would I would lose all of that advantage. I'd have to be starting over again."
mm,
So that's an example of what sunk costs are that you've, so they're like opportunity costs, but sort of longitudinally after a while, after
mm,
you've made the decision to invest in this particular capital, or social capital, cultural capital, or intellectual capital, or economic capital,
mm,
to give up all that I've put in to acquire those capitals is a
mm,
cost
mm,
to do something new. And
mm,
that's a cost we often don't think about, but we know people are very, very reluctant
mm,
to change.
mm,
And
mm,
part of that is because you give up so much of what you've already done.
mm. So can high cost stop people even when they expect to succeed and value the task?
Yes, because for exactly the reasons I've been saying, it can stop you from doing something new.
Hmm.
It can stop you, and at different ages you can think about. So for example, we were talking about sunk costs. The
Mm,
older you are and the more time you've put into developing a particular skill set, the more
mm,
costly it will be for you to try something new.
mm,
Now, midlife crisis is what a lot of people talk about, and a
mm,
midlife crisis is when you suddenly decide what you've done
mm,
is not worth it,
mm,
and you have a reevaluation and you
mm,
say, what am I going to do next?
mm,
And it makes many people very anxious because the end of their life is getting closer.
mm,
So the closer they are to what they think is the end of their life, the more
mm,
costly it will be to give up what you know how to do and try to do something new. But you
mm,
may be so bored or so tired of
mm,
doing what you've already done that you're willing to make that leap. And
mm,
for some people, it is a big leap, even though you're sure you can succeed, it will take you a while to succeed.
mm,
So you won't succeed immediately. If it's
mm,
a really important um, task, it's really an important skill to develop,
mm,
which many achievement tasks are.
mm,
Um, you may be reluctant to try it because you've already invested so much time in something else. Now, the other costs that we've talked about will also can stop you from doing something. So if you're anxious
mm,
and you think you're going to be more anxious when you think about doing it, and you don't want to feel anxious, as you get to be an adult, you can make these choices to a
mm,
greater extent than you could when you were a child. You will essentially say, no, I'm not going to do it because
mm,
it makes me anxious. So I
mm,
don't play games. I don't play competitive games anymore. Even
mm,
though I know I could have fun doing it and the people want me to do it, I could be with my friends doing this together. I know it will make me feel so anxious when I get into it that I will say, no, I don't want to do it. And I
mm,
sometimes will say, so I'll go to a movie with you if you want to go to a movie or out to dinner or go dancing, but I'm not going to play a competitive game with you today.
mm.
Would
Wow.
be, how that would work. So many things that we think we can do and that we think we might like doing, we don't do.
Mm.
I mean, the biggest reason is because we don't have time. But
Okay. Is it that that's the reason why sometimes people they can wait cost when they want to choose an activity over another?
yes,
Mm,
that's why people who are life planners will tell you to make a list.
Mm,
All of the positive things on one side and all of the negative things on the other, so
mm,
that you bring them to mind and you
mm,
see them laid out right in front of you. Now,
mm,
what they don't often do is they don't take into account that the person is also thinking about all the other demands
mm,
on their time. And
mm,
that kind of list focuses their attention on one thing, not on the hierarchy of things.
mm,
And in real life, we're not usually choosing this or not. We're choosing this or that.
mm.
And so you need to know something about that in order to know why a person would pick this or that as an example. So, uh, well, I can give you lots of examples of varying parts of your life. So, for example, if you're going to become a parent,
Mm,
how you think you'll respond to that depends on what you think the job of being a good parent is.
mm,
And that will impact whether you decide to parent or not, but it'll also impact a lot of other things you do as well.
mm,
So you may say, for example, no, I don't want to train to be a doctor because I want to have children.
mm,
And when I have children, I won't have enough time to be a doctor. So why should I invest so much time in becoming a doctor when I know that if I have children, I may have to stop? So
mm,
that would lead women to make, in many cases, to make different choices than men, because the cost of doing a particularly demanding career is
mm,
quite high if you're
mm.
thinking about also being a highly involved parent.
Or is it the reason why some students, uh, you see when it comes to choose certain field like STEM, they can wait the cost?
Yes, very much. And if they think they're going to have to go on and get a PhD
Mhm.
to be a scientist, then
Mm,
that's a lot of years in school. That's 10 years
mm,
post high school that you have to stay in school, and you have to put other things. You can't. It's hard to parent when you're in school.
mm,
It's hard to take care of your parents if you're in school. It's hard to spend much time with your friends. So there are tremendous costs to deciding to do something that's going to take a lot of training,
mm,
school being one example of that, but being an athlete or a tennis player or a musician or other kinds of options that also take a lot of training. And a person may just say, no, it just costs too much for
mm,
me to do that. And in that case, they would be talking about time and energy, that they simply don't have the time and energy to do that. It also can affect what they do. So, for example, gender roles, we talked a little bit about those in another session.
mm,
If you think, so there have been some studies that have asked men and women how they
mm,
respond to becoming a parent.
mm,
And if you live in a culture that is pretty sex type, that men and women do very different things,
mm,
women being more likely to stay home and take care of the children, men being more likely to be the breadwinner and to support the family economically,
mm,
finding out that you're going to be a parent in that kind of culture,
mm,
the men will decide, oh, I have to work even harder because I
mm,
need to make more money. I now have children that I have to take care of, that I have to pay for, as well as a spouse.
mm,
Whereas the women will say, I have to cut back on work because I'm going to have another person I have to take care of. So the
mm,
very same other activity in a person's life will
mm,
change the value
mm,
of things that compete with this
mm,
other activity. So that's an example of where cost can be seen in different ways. So in that example, the men would see the cost, meaning I have to work harder and
mm,
make more money, which means I then can't spend the time doing other things. The woman would be, I have to find a way to spend more time with my baby, and so I'm going to have to cut back work. So a very different implication
mm,
depending on the world that they live in. Or we have to move because we have to go to a place where there's good childcare. We have to, I mean, you could any decision
mm.
can impact a whole bunch of other choices that you have to make in order to support that decision.
Oh, that means culture and the social can influence what people see as cost.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Mm. Wow. So how, when it comes to, for example, how does people understanding of cost change over time when it comes to development of cost?
Well, I, people change and life demands change.
And
So, so over time we can be thinking, I'm a developmentalist, and so I tend to think about younger people, though the older I'm getting, the more I'm thinking about older people. So,
mm,
if you're thinking about children, then you're
mm,
talking about investing a lot
mm,
into their development.
mm,
So, costs have to go into developing talents
mm,
and uh, assets and other things. As
mm,
you get into the middle part of your life, it's
mm,
the demands that the culture makes on you, and the changes in your biological being,
mm,
and the time you've already invested in doing certain things puts
mm,
you at a different place in
mm,
making such choices.
mm,
So then the choices may be related to, um, well, how do you integrate children
mm,
in your life plans? Your parents may be getting to so that they need some help. How do you integrate caring for your parents, your grandparents, in your life? You've
mm,
already invested, so some costs will become much higher, sort of in the middle of your life.
mm,
You're also losing capacity as you get older. So the older you get, you have to uh, you know you've lost some of it. Learning new things will be harder
mm,
because you have to now, in some cases, undo what you already did,
mm,
or you have to. It will just cost more because you are in the process of losing capacity. So for me to learn to play tennis now in this point in my life
mm,
would take so much
mm,
that that would be a very costly decision.
mm,
And
mm,
the probability of my succeeding will have gone down a great deal.
mm, mm,
So, Paul Baltus and his wife have a wonderful theoretical framework that they call SOC, SOC.
mhm,
S is for selection,
mm,
O is for optimization,
mhm,
and C is for choice.
mm,
And they talk about so over your lifetime, whether
mm,
you're selecting to new things or you're optimizing the skills you already have,
mm,
or you're choosing, essentially it's compensation, you're choosing something else to do to compensate for a skill that you're losing. So I
mm,
think that's a very nice other developmental theoretical system
mm,
to mix with SVET. So because uh, part of what it's talking about in selection, optimization, compensation is that at different points in your life, you're at different points on those three goals. Whether
mm,
you're selecting to learn new things, whether you're trying to optimize the things that you already do best, or
mm,
whether you're compensating for losing skills.
mm,
So I wear a hearing aid. That's compensation. I had to make that choice. I can't any longer just have a conversation. I have to
mm,
wear my hearing aid so I can hear it.
mm,
So that would be an example. But you could also think if I wanted to go traveling,
mm,
I might want to buy something that would help me walk
mm,
because I'm losing walking capacity. It hurts when I walk. So I
mm,
have to compensate. And
mm,
that means I have to make different choices about what I choose. Or to use the language of cost,
mm,
those choices cost me more
mm. Wow.
because I'm bringing less skills to it. I'm losing skills as I get older.
Mm. So among of the cost, I like how you explain psychological cost, even when you talk about emotional cost like fear, anxiety, how those can increase the cost, and also emotional cost, how it can affect engagement and persistence. So thinking about how to reduce cost, what can educators, for example, or leaders do to reduce unnecessary cost?
Well, one thing is to reduce. Well, they can reduce the cost by making it free.
Mhm,
They can reduce the cost by making it easier. They can
mhm,
reduce the cost by providing social supports.
mhm,
So exactly the kinds of things we've been talking about. If you're a teacher of kids in elementary school, you
mhm,
want to focus on giving them opportunities
mhm,
because they have the capacity to learn lots of things.
mhm,
So that's two languages. You want to have kids learn two languages?
mhm,
Start early because the cost of learning a second language is much lower at that
mhm,
point than it is when you're an adult. So you can think about the educational system. If they want to have bilingual speakers in their country, they can say, well, we should start this early when it's easiest for the kids to learn. Now, in the United States, we do exactly the opposite. We don't give them a second language until they get to high school.
mhm,
Well, a second language is hard to learn at that time
mhm,
because the brain is not the brain has so much in it already that learning a second language is no longer easy.
mhm,
And the kids have so many other things to do. So the sunk cost of learning a second language is high at that point. So
mhm,
that's an example of very poor engineering on the
mhm,
part of the educational system
mhm,
about when you would want to teach kids different things.
mhm,
Okay. Second language, teach it early. Algebra, teach it later. So there are ways that the system, if you take into account the lifespan of the person, there are
mhm,
ways that you can coordinate what we know about the biological system maturing and then heading towards death
mhm,
that would tell people who thought about it carefully
mhm,
when they should make particular opportunities available to people when they're most likely to be able to take them up. The same, so when you and if you teach in a classroom, we know that you learn best if you're right on the cusp of what you know.
mhm,
So it's challenging. You know up to this, you know 1 mile's worth.
mhm,
The best way to teach is to focus right where you are and the very next thing.
mhm,
Now, that means you can't teach everybody the same. You can't have one lesson plan for everybody in the class because the kids will not all be at the same place in their own learning. So
mhm,
you need to be thinking about how that's how we make it easy. We
mhm,
teach it up, we teach it at the right time, which means we have to know where they're at in their learning, teach them right at that cusp, and then increase the difficulty as they master. So this
mhm,
is what some people would call a mastery focused classroom. They would
mhm,
try to, in fact, find out where each child is,
mhm,
teach to that moment, teach to that skill level. Would be an
mhm,
example of what teachers could do. It's an
mhm,
example of what people who are doing career training could do. So the way we train doctors is ridiculous.
mhm,
We have them spend hours and hours and hours on things when we know that's not good. That's not a good way to learn. That's a very inefficient way to learn,
mhm,
and we should do it in an entirely different way. But for some reason, the culture decides. I mean, my next door neighbor has a son who's in medical school, so that's salient to me, and we've been talking about it. Why he has to work for 20 hours straight. Well, I
mhm,
wouldn't want a doctor that I went to see be on their 21st hour of no sleep. I mean, they just can't make good decisions. So that's crazy. But
mhm,
yet we do it. And we do it in the training, and that drives people away because they go, I don't want to spend a year with no sleep. I mean, I just don't want to do that. And
mhm,
that's a way they've made it not necessarily difficult. They've made it demanding in a way that is arbitrary. So
mhm,
you want to make it easy for people to do it. You
mhm,
want to make it possible, easy, not easy, but challenging easy.
mhm,
So it's right at the level of where they're ready to learn. So
mhm,
those would be some examples. If you're a parent, you have to think the same way about your child. When do you expect them to do something? We know cultures differ greatly on when the culture thinks a child should be ready to do something,
mm,
and therefore they structure education differently.
mm,
So one thing we need to do, if you're an international educational specialist, you should
mm,
think a lot about, well, how, if we wanted to design optimal learning for everyone,
mm,
how could we get educators to think about
mm,
the best timing
mm,
of different courses, different topics?
mm.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I like it how you answered the question, even how you come up with just as we think about international programs, how we can even consider cost. You reminded me how international programs, even NGOs, international organization, they can consider culture and so
Mm-hmm.
as it's connected to the cost.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is the most important idea before we conclude our conversation today? So, what is the important idea you want people to remember about cost in straightened expectancy value theory?
Well, the most important thing is everything has a cost. So you better find out what people think are the costs. So if you're studying it, ask them why they don't do it, why they
Mm,
don't want to do it, what they're afraid of, what would help.
mm,
And we would get far more people actually then engaging in tasks that we want them to.
mm,
So we often don't ask, well, why don't you do it? I mean, your dissertation was a good example of where we spend a lot of time talking about how you could find out from the participants why they weren't doing it.
mm,
So I think the most important message is everything has a cost,
mm,
and people are making choices amongst many things that are highly valuable.
mm, mm,
And we need to take that into account. It isn't that so when I first began this work, I was looking at why girls didn't go on in math.
mm,
Nobody was asking why they did go on and what they went on. And so
mm,
we got a lot of silly answers like, well, girls don't think they can succeed. Well,
mm,
actually, girls do think they can succeed. They just don't want to succeed at that thing. So
mm,
why? What is it about math that makes them not want to do it? Well, when we went that direction, we found a lot of interesting facts about why within the United States, there
mm,
are gender differences in life choices.
mm,
And it isn't that people don't feel able to do what the other sex does necessarily, it's that they
mm,
don't want to,
mm,
or it costs too much.
mm,
And so we need to be mindful of that doing research and in developing interventions. So, a good counter example that I
mm,
want to leave you with
mm,
is in Germany, they were doing a lot of work trying to get more people to go into the sciences,
mm,
particularly in gender. They were trying to get girls to be more likely to go into the sciences.
mm,
They didn't, they weren't intending to ask about other subject areas,
mm,
but I convinced them they should ask about English as well, or
mm,
language. So in this case, it was German and German literature.
mm,
And what they found was
mm,
that making girls more likely to want to go into math and the sciences led them to think worse about their ability to do literacy activities. So their
mm,
confidence in their language activities went down, and
mm,
their interest in it went down. So
mm,
raising the math had a
mm,
cost. It
mm,
reduced their interest in something else.
mm,
We, as the culture, made the decision they wanted them to go up in math. They
mm,
didn't understand that that was likely then to make them go down in something else.
mm,
So be careful what you wish for,
mm,
because it will impact. And these are hierarchies. So when you start messing around with individuals' hierarchies, you can
mm,
have some bad effects on things that you didn't anticipate.
mm. Wow. Thank you so much, Jack. I do you have any additional thing to what you said? I like it when we are always having a conversation. We will even continue. So, if you have nothing to add to the session today, I really want to say thank you.
Okay.
People do not act based only on ability or value. They also think about cost. So if the cost is too high, as you understand, people may step back even when they can succeed. In our next video, we will ask another key question. Who am I?
Okay.
How identity shapes motivation.
Okay. I'll be
Thank you
happy to do that.
so much.
Okay.